why, like, there's loads of questions, but one is, why has anarchy had such bad PR? Why is there no iconic, heroic figure of anarchy that's like, this is the anarchy woman or man, and where has it been successful, and can you talk us through an example of how it might work in a sort of a reasonable and visible example?
Okay, so we'll start with the negative. Yeah. It's difficult to work out exactly why public opinion is so hostile, but it's always been the case. So right from the point when anarchists started to organise and call themselves anarchists, so we're talking from the 1840s to the 1870s, they attracted a bad press. And I think it's partly because of the ways in which anarchists expressed their critique. So they were talking primarily, I suppose, not to the old autocrats or the aristocrats or the sort of the old landed. I mean, they didn't like that either. But the people that they most upset were those that they had something in common with. And they were talking really to Republicans and liberals who they accused of failing to deliver on revolutionary goals. So the standard kind of historic goals of equality, liberty, and fraternity. And what they were saying was that, if you're serious about those goals, then you can't organise in the way that you're organising. You can't defend the constitutions that you've set up. Because fundamentally what those constitutions do is structure inequality and bring enmity between people by protecting the right to private property. And for as long as you do that, and for as long as you use the law to uphold that relationship, you're forever going to have masters and slaves. And you can tell me, as a liberal or a Republican, that you've abolished slavery, that you abhor that kind of relationship, but actually what you've done in your constitution is that you've formally abolished the ownership of people, but you've now put most people in a relationship of enslavement by forcing them to work for others on the owner's terms. So that's a pretty devastating critique, because it suggests that everything that the liberal or the Republican state defends in terms of rights, democracy, at that time there wasn't any democracy, but certainly in terms of rights, was a fiction. And not only that, compared to other socialists, the anarchists refused to contemplate entering into these systems in order to change them, because they believed that the systems themselves were inevitably corrupting. So unlike social democrats, unlike other socialists, and certainly, some of the socialist currents that come from, they're informed by Marxism, they refused to think in terms of organising political parties, and they always advocated direct action. And as soon as you put yourself outside of the systems and you say, one, I'm going to fight your systems because I think they're wrong. Two, I'm going to expose the values that you hold dear as being false. And three, and I'm going to fight you by methods that you don't approve of. It's perhaps not surprising that anarchists get a bad name. They look like they're irrational. They look like it's easy to demonise them as irrational. They look like they're outlaws. They look like they just want to destroy. And that's how they're portrayed, even before anarchists do anything that's remotely controversial. And there are controversial things that anarchists do historically. But even before any of this happens, anarchists are being demonised as outlaws and criminals and people who need to be dealt with repressive force.
It's interesting how many norms are called into question by even the basic tenets that you have introduced, and seemingly polar philosophies or ideals such as liberalism, republicanism, conservatism, socialism, capitalism, Marxism are rendered as being part of a quite limited attitude and quite a materialistic and commodifying attitude towards, people and resources. Thanks for watching this podcast and going all the way to the end of it. Would you so kind as to click the bell, it might not be there, because over there, and subscribing so that we can infiltrate your serenity and peace of mind with jangling bells and buzzes. Thank you.